On October 7th, 27-year-old Aryeh Ziering was among the many IDF reservists who was called up into immediate action down to the Gaza border area. Soon after that, on that day, he lost his life in combat against the onslaught of Palestinian terrorists. Ziering was a dual Israeli-American citizen whose parents, Debbie and Mark, immigrated or made Aliyah to Israel from the U.S. nearly 3 decades ago, seeking their own Zionist dream. Now, like so many other parents and other family members here, they are coping with their own grief while honoring the memory of a son who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of his nation. And joining us now is Mark Ziering. Thank you so much for joining us. First of all, Mark, tell us about, from your perspective, what happened on October 7th and what you know happened with your son on that day down south.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me on.
Sure.
Aryeh was home with us for the holiday weekend, Simchat Torah, as people will remember, and we had a wonderful Friday night in synagogue with family. We danced together and had a wonderful family meal Friday night. Aryeh had been in the Army for the last 7.5 years, and he was a captain in the K9 unit in Okitz. So he was always used to kind of being on call and online because the unit's very active. That Shabbat morning, after a wonderful evening, I went to stop by his room on my way to synagogue, as I usually do on holidays and Shabbat. And he was up already, and he was doing something. He was on his phone, which wasn't unusual for him because of his Army responsibilities. You know, on holidays and Shabbat, he always had to kind of see what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. I went into his room. It was about 7:30 in the morning. I found out afterwards that he already knew to some extent what was happening in the south and was beginning to kind of mobilize his troops. He had about 100 combat soldiers that were reported to him into action. And I said, you know, I'm going to synagogue. I'll see you soon. And he said yes, and I left. And the next thing I heard, which was about a half an hour later, when my daughter came to synagogue, Aryeh and our other son had run down south because they had heard that there was a dire situation going on down there. They're both incredibly motivated, as so many young people in this country are, and so many people in the Army, to go and kind of protect the civilian population of this country. Aryeh and so many others felt such a calling to protect us and give us a peaceful day-to-day life in this country.
Right. Now, if I am correct, I'm curious, you do have Holocaust survivors in your family. I wonder both that as a motivation for, I guess, the Zionist impulse. You moved to create a new family here, and a lot of discussion here in Israel. We just had International Holocaust Remembrance Day, how that may have impacted on the willingness to make sacrifices, both you and you have to say, your wife coming here and your son Aryeh in defending this country.
No, I think that's an important point. In our the connection, both my parents were survivors. My wife's family also had a very complicated story around the Holocaust as well. And I think my family in particular, but many families in Israel, really understood this time in history that we're living, of building our own country for the first time, or first time in 2,000 years. And the context of that and the importance in the ashes of the Holocaust to do that. Aryeh, my parents passed away about 15 years ago, but Aryeh was 27, so the first 12 years of his life, he was exposed to them and their stories. And I think he really, grew up, as all my kids, with a significant understanding of the meaning and the importance of this country for the Jewish people and the unique opportunity that we all have living here and building this country. One of the things I say is, we're obviously devastated to have lost Aryeh, but I don't think he would have regretted or changed anything he did, because he was living his values in a very meaningful life by defending this country and being in the IDF for the last 7 years.
Also having children, other children now serving, and maybe something what Relic Shafia spoke about now is about finding that unity in the wake of this tragedy that was so elusive to Israel, seemingly prior to October 7th for different reasons.
Yeah. Okay. Big topics to cover.
And they are.
So one thing I just want to kind of draft a little bit over the last question you asked was, in my family and in many families, we have a story of my maternal grandfather, my kid's great-grandfather, was taken down to a forest one day and killed by the Nazis and, disappeared. And there was nothing we could do. And I think the moment in time in history that we're living where I'm devastated that we lost our son, but that we could now fight immediately and strike the perpetrators and, God willing, bring down the hostages is an incredibly powerful thing that, it doesn't make up for losing a son, but it certainly, makes what we're doing incredibly meaningful to me and my family. I think the young generation, talking about the soldiers and my other kids in the Army, I think they realize that in a way that wasn't as obvious to me before this war as it is now. That's just not my kids. All the young people and the reservists in this country are going, as a duty and a responsibility with an incredible amount of conviction to fight this just war. And I haven't seen or heard, a young person complain. And some people, as we know, are away from their families for 4 or 5 months in very difficult situations. They go and they fight because they believe this is what we need to do and this is right. And I think it's an incredible, testimony to the youth of this country. And I'm so, amazed as I watch it in our community and many communities as well. And my kids, don't want to be home not contributing to the war effort. So I think it's incredibly important to them, and I appreciate it that they want to continue to find a way to help. And I think it's just part of the amazing, values that this country creates. Prior to the war, you alluded to the disunity that we had. And it's incredibly sad. I remember the Yom Kippur before the war, there was, a ruckus in Tel Aviv around davening. And everybody out there, I imagine, was wrong. But we had hit a low point. And I hope, in retrospect, our enemies will see that maybe they did us the biggest favor by making us realize that we have to unite and change our ways in terms of the disunity we have, because we can only survive and flourish when we're reunited in this country.
All right. Mark Ziering, again, thank you for joining us. I again apologize for the technical issue. And again, I say we join in the mourning of you and your wife and family for your son Aryeh. May his memory clearly will be a blessing. Thank you so much for joining us on I24 News.